Yeah, well, I certainly think where you go will determine what you do for reasons I've already mentioned. I wouldn't send anybody to sub-Saharan Africa as an evangelist, but I might send them as a theological educator. But then there are the big questions we need to work through. Going back to Africa, for example, that's where I grew up. Colonialism is a major problem. We need to have a genuine rethink. I went to a church there. I don't want to mention the church or the country for obvious reasons. I don't want to embarrass anybody. But I spoke at one particular church that's been around at that time for 102 years. You had one missionary, not from North America, so please don't worry about that, or Canada. They're from a different part of the world. A missionary who went there about a century beforehand. They planted this church. They ran it for 50 years. They built that church up to, I guess at that stage, 300 in fellowship with a team of elders. But the elders were just yes men. They had no actual power. The missionary just controlled everything. And then that missionary decided it's time to retire after 50 years. I'll get somebody else from my country to come back out here and run this church. So a second missionary came, and for a second 50 years this other missionary ran the church. When I went to preach there, it was hugely colonial. I could close my eyes and imagine I was back in the country where these missionaries came from, because it wasn't African at all. It didn't reflect in any way African culture. The elders still had no power. They were just figureheads, but they didn't take any responsibility. They didn't make any decisions. The missionary simply told them what they were to do, and they carried it out. That was crazy. And one of these elders, an African man, was incredibly able. He in fact had done an MBA in Oxford University in England, so hugely intellectually able. He ran the entire national grid for the country, so he had massive responsibility in industry, commanding thousands of employees. And yet when it came to church life, this foreign missionary would tell him what to do and he just carried it out. That has to change. We need to really rethink how we do mission in Africa and how we work our way out of a job, ultimately, because it's not our country, it's their country. They need to take charge. So the institutions need to be run by the nationals. There is actually a very good example of this taking place right now in Tanzania, where I've been as well working. What happened there was, I think, an interesting case study in mission, because the German missionaries and the British missionaries about 100 years ago divided the country up between them. And the British missionaries did not have much strategic thinking. They did not think about indigenization or handing the work over to the nationals. And so now in the north of Tanzania, all the organizations, the colleges, the clinics, the schools, all still run entirely by the missionaries. The nationals don't have much say. In the south, the Germans, from the word go, decided we will make sure that nationals begin to take over the work. So you have lots of boards in schools and clinics and Bible colleges in the south of Tanzania, but on those boards it's only a minority of folk who are missionaries. In fact, the law is only one German missionary is allowed to be on any one board. The rest have to be Tanzanians, so it's an entirely indigenous work. We need to rethink those kind of things. The same sort of thing happens in Europe too. How do we do mission? I think the key principle is go in and do what only missionaries can do, but work in such a way that the nationals will eventually take over what you're doing. And if what you're building, whatever it is, if what you're building will not eventually be able to be run entirely by the nationals, then just don't do it.